I see you added some things.
I even had a chance to look over the stuff that you added.
I did not look over the stuff that you added. So
I didn't add a whole lot. I did a note to one thing. I added a similar type thing, and then I just dropped in a couple of things if we needed the additional talking points. Is what it really comes down to.
mm-hmm, mm-hmm. I just now noticed all of the memes you put in here as well. So. They're
Those
kind
were
of gross.
Just they are, but it was also just kind of fun. Like I am all for that type of trolling.
Oh yeah, if this feels very very British.
It's funny,
even though it came out of Governor Newsom's press office.
Yeah, it feels like someone who grew up in the age of 4chan's heyday decided to take control and say, "No, let me show you how it's done."
Mm-hmm. I can see that. Yeah, I know not the vast majority of what I know about 4chan has come from a documentary about QAnon. Did you see the documentary Enter the Storm?
I have not watched it. It's still in the list of things to watch. What's interesting is that I learned more about 4chan as a result of learning more about Anonymous and its background and that tie-in. So it's interesting to think about the disparate two crowds. I'm sure there's probably a lot of crossover as well, because that type of hacker tends to also be a conspiracy theorist anyway. But
I can see where if you were on 4chan and you wanted to make a flip.
Yeah.
You have a documentary about Anonymous in your Plex library, is it right?
I do.
Yeah. Is that the documentary you're referring to?
I know that one went into it some. I wouldn't say I was immersed in that world, but I was around a number of people who were in kind of dabbling in that space. So in that social group, there were a number of people who worked in various capacities, sort of related to cyber security and sort of related to just their network administration and things of that nature, where being aware of the things that were going on made a lot of sense. So if you think about it from the standpoint of people who shared the sense of humor but wanted to make sure they were protecting the stuff they were charged with protecting from the types of people who would engage in that type of humor, it was a very convoluted kind of relationship for sure.
Yeah. I can see that being convoluted for sure. I was gonna say though that just for listeners, the memes that I'm referring to they came out of Governor Newsom's office or press office, was a response to President Trump responding to a journalist with the phrase "quiet piggy," and the images are of Trump as anthropomorphic pigs, giving him pig features like a pig nose or a pig body or a whole pig face. I mean, it really looks, it fits for sure. We may come back to that because you have some more things down there. So, but I did want to talk about the iPhone Pocket.
I saw at a high level, I saw that they were releasing it, and I didn't really pay attention, and I didn't look at it pretty much at all until I noticed you put it in the notes. So it had not been something that has been on my radar, and I haven't listened to other podcasts in quite some time because it just hasn't. I haven't found a working schedule where that makes sense at the moment. So I found it interesting that I was looking at it from the kind of general public space, I guess. Like as a consumer who would just be hearing about it, and the very first thing I looked at was like, this shit isn't for me.
No,
Like
it's not
that
for me.
that was absolutely the first thing I thought, and then I noticed that you had that in the list.
Yeah. Well, and I was gonna say, uh, yeah, it's not for me. So I'll for the listeners, there is an iPhone Pocket, which is it's a limited run. I'll see if I can, if the bits of the press release are worth saying it to describe it. But so it was a collaboration with a design house called Issey Miyake, and I believe that's how it's pronounced, and Apple. I'm trying to avoid there are things in this press release like it features, it's described as featuring a singular 3D knitted construction designed to fit in any iPhone. I'll come back to that, any iPhone. But I don't know what 3D knitted construction is because everything in our world is three-dimensional. So that needs, for me, I mean, I'm sure that means something to somebody, but it's more of a reason why it's not for me. But
so I will interject briefly on that one. Not that I have a good explainer, but I have a couple of braces for the foot that tout that 3D knitting type of construction. And so the thing that I can point to that I notice that's different is that there aren't seams where the edges of the fabric are put together. So it's like it is printed, so to speak, as a continuous item. I assume that that's kind of what this is getting at and what it means because it would make sense.
No seams.
Yeah, essentially.
Okay, and I've heard of that. I think the first thing that I didn't hear it referred to as 3D knitted, but the first thing I think I've heard of was the North Face had some clothing in their Summit series that had no seams, and I'm wondering if that's the same thing. So
I'm sure there is a difference because I've seen reference to, it could just be, marketing terminology for a particular company too, but I've seen reference to 3D knitting and I've seen reference to 3D printing fabric. And so there is probably a difference in the way things are created, but what that difference is, I don't know.
Yeah, so that's cool. It's just for me, it's a bad term because I'm ignorant of what it is, but it seems like it does mean something specifically in the garment world or the fabrics world. I think the thing that bothers me most about this, and it's not so much that it's bad, it just is the sort of, it's just a type of speak that I tend to find off-putting, and it's inspired by the concept of, quote, a piece of cloth.
Yeah, I saw that and immediately rolled my eyes.
Yeah, and I think there's just I think I get what they're trying to say, but I think it just seems, what's the word? I'll come back to this, but yeah, anyway.
But I didn't read in detail the press release, but my very first thought was, this sounds nothing like the Phil Schiller version of marketing that I grew accustomed to.
Oh yeah, no, and I think I think this is absolutely marketed the way that it should be for who the target audience, the target consumer is in this case. So
probably. But
I look at this thing and I was like, I just want to touch it. It does look like something that might feel really good. But I said I was going to come back to it, but I'm not sure what it is that I'm trying to come back to. But just the sort of language where it seems to overhype something simple, and it's like, just let the simple thing be simple and let it its own, let it live on its own merits, or let it stand on its own merits. That might be what I'm trying to communicate. But
I think so. One of the things that I do think is interesting about this, obviously it's not for me, and I don't get the why behind it, but I have no doubt someone looks at it and immediately thinks, I understand that, and I want it because of it. And the reason I find it interesting is because it feels like a generational pivot between what a certain group of people have grown accustomed to knowing and understanding about Apple design and marketing and messaging, and whatever that transition to a different crowd is.
Well, it's not really for the West. This is meant for folks in the East, in the Eastern Hemisphere. This is meant for folks in Asia, and you can look and see, like the press release was it was like I don't remember what it's like 3. I don't remember what time zone it was referred to, but maybe 3 a.m. on the West Coast, or maybe 3 a.m. on the East Coast. I'm not sure. But I know that it was, I think it was targeted at Asian countries, because it's interesting. So it's a limited run. So anybody nobody can buy them anymore because they're sold out. They sold out in less than a week. What does that mean? Not sure, because they're they said it was a limited run, but they didn't specify how many. So it's hard to know what that means. But I can't. I have to. I expect that it's in 6 figures. I'm assuming it's the quantity is in the 6 figures, but there are only 10 retail stores that you could go actually see one in person and buy it in person, and 6 of those were in Asia, and one in the United States, and it was in New York City, and it wasn't the global flagship store on Fifth Avenue. It was Soho, and it was the Soho store, which is the oldest New York City store, because it was Soho, then it was Fifth Avenue, then it was West 14th, then it was the fourth store was the one I worked at, which was had their 16-year anniversary of opening this month. I can't even think of the name of it. Upper West Side. It's been a long time. But the Soho store fits in a specific, or it sits in a specific part of, it exists in a certain fashion focused district of New York City. So, and then there was London, Milan, and Paris.
I was trying to remember geographically. The Soho store is not that far from Fifth Avenue, is it? Physically? Or is it?
Say that again. I think I lost some of your audio.
I was just trying to think about it geographically. The distance between the Soho store and the Fifth Avenue store physically, is it? It's not that far, is it?
I mean, nothing's really that far on the island of Manhattan.
Fair, but fairly, it's easily walkable proximity.
It's a long walk.
Okay. So it's probably further than I was thinking in my head. And again, that's not a store I've visited, so
I think so. I'm trying to remember, because it's.
Well, I guess
because using the subway is so easy.
Well, I was just going to say, if I gave the background for what was in my head, it probably would make more sense. So I remember when I was in the area, I was looking at the map and noticed a fashion district that I thought referenced Soho. Now, I wasn't looking at it from the standpoint of walking to it, but it felt like, looking at the map, it was in relatively easy walking distance as a general proximity from where I was, which, in fairness, would have been probably equal from where I was to try to walk to the Fifth Ave store. So if you were to double the distance between them, means it probably isn't as walkable as it felt when I was looking at it in the moment. But that was what was playing in the back of my head when I was thinking of proximity, since I never visited the Soho store.
Okay. Yeah. So to give some real-time follow-up, it's 3.2 miles walking. The fastest walking distance is 3.2 miles, and Apple Maps is estimating 1 hour and 18 minutes. I'm kind of thinking, like, how slow are you? That's a more than 20 minutes per mile kind of pace. But
I mean, I guess if you were being very leisurely.
Yeah. So, yeah, I couldn't remember, I couldn't remember how far it was, but I knew, and I remember thinking, no, I would definitely get on a train to go that distance, unless I just really wanted to enjoy a walk. But that being said, it does. You can take this walk. You can walk from Soho and see some nice sights. So if you were planning on going to Washington Square Park with the arch and the Flatiron Building and the Empire State Building and the New York Public Library and Rockefeller Center and St. Patrick's Cathedral, those are all on the way. You don't have to go out of your way to see those things. So I'd say from Grand Central Terminal, it's a pretty easy walk. Maybe like less than a mile.
Yeah, so I think
that would be to Fifth Avenue, not to Soho. Maybe 2 miles to Soho.
Yeah, and I pulled up what I was looking at just so I could provide context. So when I was up there over the summer, I was in the vicinity of the Javits Center because of the conference being held there. And so between the Javits Center and Apple Soho, that's listed at a 3.2 mile distance roughly, and this is by car. So like walking, it's the same general distance that you were talking about. But if I was kind of halfway in between them, looking at it, just trying to kind of figure out the general area, didn't feel like it was all that far. It was further than I was going to walk at that particular time because of the foot, but it was not further than I would have felt comfortable walking if I were being a tourist.
I will say everything does look closer everything on the map looks like it should be so much more walkable than it actually is.
Yeah, I noticed that as well. Just in comparison between being there and looking at it after the fact.
Like it doesn't seem like it would take that long to walk across Brooklyn Bridge, but it takes longer than you'd expect.
Yeah, I can certainly see that.
So
sorry, not to necessarily derail the conversation into a geography lesson.
I love maps and I love geography, so I enjoy the side topic. So anyway, like I said, I thought this thing looked. Immediately when I saw it, because it's not usual to see Apple release something and not have at least been expecting it, or in my world, in my brain, that's not a typical thing. So when I heard people start talking about it, I was like, oh, okay, that's interesting. So I went and I looked at it and I was like, okay, that's kind of cool. It's not for me. Like I knew immediately this is not for me. One, I don't. It's just not how I carry my phone. But I did find it interesting that this is the same design house that designed Steve Jobs' turtleneck. At that point I was like, oh, I guess he did not get those from Costco. But that's I never really thought about where he got them, and I never thought about what quality they were, because he wore Levi jeans, and maybe they were really high quality Levi jeans, but like up close they did, it looked like, they didn't look special, but how much can you tell about a turtleneck? So, but I will say the with the exception of John Gruber on the talk show, which released today, and I was happy to be able to hear him talk about the iPhone Pocket, because his was, I feel like, the closest to my response to it, but most of the other people that I follow that follow these sort of things, they thought it was a joke. They thought this press release was a joke, and I remember people commenting, if this had been, April 1st, it would absolutely 100% an April Fool's joke. But it shouldn't really. It really is not that big of a surprise, considering like the Hermes Apple Watch bands, and the first 10 years ago, the first Apple Watch, there's that gold one that was 10. I think started at 10 grand, and trying to think if there had been anything else. There was like that one-off Mac Pro from 2013 Mac Pro that was made of gold. I think there was a Product Red one as well, but they weren't something that were sold in the store. They were gifts to certain people. But it's kind of. I didn't think it was a joke, and I didn't think it was out of their. Maybe not normal for them, but I didn't think it was a stretch or unexpected. But maybe unexpected is not the right word, but anyway.
It's a space that they've dabbled in enough that it isn't surprising. And I guess my initial thought seeing it or hearing about it was certainly not in the realm of it being a April Fool's joke or anything, other than the appearance just isn't something that I would equate to expensive fashion. But expensive fashion tends to be that way for me. Like I am very much not a high fashion person because I look at a lot of it and think it just looks ridiculous. And this fits that same vein for me. I wouldn't say it looks ridiculous, but it doesn't look high fashion. Like that's not, I don't equate those things. And honestly, like the Hermes stuff is kind of similar for me. I certainly think Hermes makes some great quality things, but their stuff doesn't scream, this justifies the price tag to me in any way. And it's just my perception of a lot of things in that world.
So I remember having lots of discussions with people about things like this in the Apple store when I was working for the year and a half that before I was at the Genius Bar. And just like, to pay X amount of money for X technology is usually not a stretch for me. Or to even, or maybe not even to pay for it, but just to understand, there's a Mac Pro and it costs $10,000. Well, let's say the last Intel Mac Pro when you got into a 5-figure Mac Pro, it was like, yeah, I get that. Like, this is not a shock to me. But you know how many people, there are numbers of people like $2,000 for a computer? That's so expensive. And I was like, well, that's, I get it. But, I remember talking to a woman, and I was like, if you're spending, like, I can't think of, at the time I was like, I don't think I could think of a time where like I would have spent more than $150 on a pair of shoes. And I know that there are women who come into this store and they're wearing $500, $600, $700 shoes. Like I've seen them. And it's just like that to me is not something I like. I guess I intellectually get it, but it's not, that's not where my comfort zone is. And so, this is a same sort of thing. This kind of, one, it's not how I don't think I would ever, I don't find a use case for this sort of thing, but I get that some people do, and I I fit in there. I never thought it was a joke, but I knew it wasn't for me, and I know there were some podcasters that were saying Apple's a bit tone deaf, but I don't. I mean, all of corporate America is tone deaf if you want to be realistic about it. But I kind of want to come back to that. The concept of the way economics, at least in this country, how the West treats the global South, is making it difficult for anybody to enjoy anything, or at least it's making it difficult for me with some amount of conscientiousness. It makes it difficult for me to enjoy things. I had a really hard understand, knowing more about FIFA makes it really hard for me to appreciate the World Cup. Like I had a hard time watching most World Cup matches last year. So I guess UEFA is not messed up for me because I don't know how terrible UEFA is. So I don't know how terrible the Barclays English Premier League is. So that's not quite messed up for me at the moment. But just maybe that might be an interesting thing to pivot to as far as a larger topic. But those with money are tone deaf to the rest of the world. Or don't care. I'm not sure which is worse. But then, eventually the podcasters got to, I guess I don't understand high fashion.
Yeah, I don't immediately agree with the tone deaf argument in this case for Apple, because to me it doesn't fit that category. I'm not sure how I would argue it other than to point to past forays and collaborations and partnerships with different groups and say they've always dabbled with things that are not mainstream necessarily. And while I have very strong opinions and arguments on a number of things with the hardware side and some of the other things that we've talked about in the past. I see this as just a foray into a market segment where they saw there was a desire for it that they could potentially tap into, and it just isn't something that fits my worldview with regard to what I would spend that type of dollar amount on. But I want to kind of emphasize this point ever so slightly. We're talking about there were two sizes, right? There was one that was around 150 and one that was a little bit more.
Yeah.
We're talking about sub $200.
230 was the other one.
Okay, so sub
The long one was
$250.
$230.
All right.
Yeah.
The Apple Watch bands are pretty much all $100 plus. And they're
Except
arguably...
The Hermes is more.
Yeah, well, I said 100 plus. Just because they're way up there doesn't negate the statement. But like, if you think about it on the same scale, a lot of those bands are ridiculously priced for what you would expect as well. Those make more sense to me, though, because of the functional element of what they are doing and how I look at different materials or different things for that specific purpose. I don't generally use a case. Like I don't generally put my phone in a bag. It's more that it's not a market for me because I don't use things in that fashion for what it is meant to be at all. Like I don't even use a competitive type of product for that. It's either the phone's in my pocket or it's in a like large bag with my laptop and other stuff. It's not, I don't use a smaller carrying device to carry stuff. It's either pockets or, a massive bag. And so even the high fashion argument kind
Sorry,
of
I was disagreeing.
Yeah, no, I agree. Even the high fashion argument is kind of negated when you think about it from that perspective, because again, it's not a product that fits any use case I have. It's not exorbitantly priced for what it's targeting when you think about the rest of Apple's product lineup and how they market and price things. And if you compare it to its closest similar thing, which would be the watch bands, in my opinion, it's really not that expensive. So that was just a long-winded way of saying the tone-deaf argument just to me doesn't fit. It's more, I think, that we're starting to see marketing that is not focused on U.S. markets, and so people are having a tough time grasping what it's for. Whereas the rest of the world probably looked at a number of advertising campaigns that Apple has run or press releases for products where it's like, I don't get that.
Yeah. I in my head I go straight to a certain type of European stereotype. It's like, oh, this is for the Americans. Yeah. I think that's a really good points that you make there, and that's kind of where I started. I didn't even have to land there. That's kind of where I started. Was like, I know this is not for me because simply I don't. That's not a solution to the problem of carrying a phone. That's not the solution that I want. I, like you, put it in my pocket. Occasionally put it in a bag, but it's usually in my pocket. And and I look at things when people say, they buy this case for X dollars. I was like for a long time, I was like, I didn't understand like how much money was, how much, like why people were spending so much money on cases. Like you just don't, But I get, we're in I just remember somebody once in the Apple store noticed that all of the geniuses behind the bar did not have a case, like pretty consistently. And I remember walking around and asking people, I was like, do you have a case on your phone? Do you have it? No. And it was like so many of the geniuses just did not use a case. And I find that interesting. That was a little an N of one from a long time ago, but yeah, I generally don't use a case either. I do when I'm traveling, just in case. But I gotta say, I really like the jokes that came after. And I put a few of them, or I put the ones that I liked. I don't know if they were the ones that these were most of them. The ones that most of them were good, but um, basic Apple guy made the comment iPod socks walk so iPhone Pocket could run, and I think I said my favorite was from the Cult Cast where they were likening it to Borat's singlet. But I think my favorite is actually, I heard this one after, but my favorite is a quote from Guy English who said, at the rate Apple is saying yes these days, they've got to be clocking tens of millions of no's.
I would love to know at this point what that looks like an actual quantification of whether that's still a core part of the culture or not.
I think it simply has to be because there's just way too much that's probably being I'm sure there's a barrage of things being that they have to just completely ignore, like and the no comes through ignoring, not actually having to say no.
Yeah, I could see that.
I mean, because they're big, like Apple's. It is we're a long way away from the company that Steve Jobs had to save in the 90s. And we're a long way away from, trying to get 5% of the market share.
Yeah.
And it's one of those things where it's like, Apple doesn't have a huge market share, but comparative, like if you think about like all of compute, even though they don't have a majority market share, what's the word? What is the phrase I'm looking for? Apple's looked at to see where the market is going.
That's a good way to put it. I was just going to say that I would think of it more as, even though they don't have necessarily the numbers market share wise, they influence the market more than almost anybody else.
They have definitely have a disproportionate, based on market share and influence. There is a disproportionate, impact on the market.
Yes.
So the last thing I wanted to say about this was the compatibility list. So they created a compatibility list. I'm not sure why they needed that, but I get it. I guess I get it. I don't know how those two things can be the same, not understanding, but also getting it. So I'm amused that they made a compatibility list, especially when there was something in the press release that was basically the 3D knitted construction is designed to fit any iPhone. So that should have been our compatibility list, but then we got an actual compatibility list on the product page, and it goes all the way back to the iPhone 8 Plus, which was from 2017, but it omitted the 16e, which was from this year. And it would be kind of ironic to have a 16e in a. It might be kind of ironic to have a 16e in an iPhone Pocket, since it's like the least expensive iPhone.
Yeah, I don't really know how I feel about the compatibility list. Like it feels more to me like we want you to use a newer phone, but we have to support, certain phones from the standpoint of, like, if you were to bring it to the bar, you would get support on this phone or later. So we can't chop those off, but we want to. You know what I mean? Like it feels like the compatibility list is a lot of BS, I guess is what I'm getting at.
Well, I mean, what iPhone isn't compatible with it?
Yeah, I mean, if you
can put the original in there.
If you could support the largest one and you could support something smaller than the largest one, then unless it's open-ended at the bottom, then I don't see where you have a true compatibility list. Now, if it's open-ended on the bottom and there's a certain amount of pressure that has to exist for a certain width and something, but then that's a really stupid-ass carrying solution.
No, it's just a weird thing. I'd love to know why. I would expect there's like some legal reason that you have to put it there, and then there's like something that dictates that, maybe company policy. I don't know, but because they do they do have phones that are considered vintage. So they have the 8 Plus, which is like has a mixed status. The 8 and the 8 Plus have a mixed status based on when they were released, but because they sold them for so long. But the iPhone 10 is in the compatibility list, but it is you can't get service at the Genius Bar. I guess maybe in California you can get service because it's vintage, but I knew that was a thing with computers. I don't know if that is a thing. I didn't know if that was a thing with phones.
Well, and that's why I'm saying I would assume that something like that is feeding why this list exists, though I'm not sure why you would omit the 16E from that perspective.
Right. So I don't know. Maybe I don't know. It's 16E is now on the list. It wasn't though.
So that would make more sense to me that it was just a forgotten model.
It was omitted.
Yeah.
Which is telling.
It would have been more telling if the Air had been forgotten.
Ooh, so I saw one in for real life this past weekend.
What'd you think? I have not seen one in person.
The thinness is cool, and maybe when all the phones are that thin, I'd see that as a direction that Apple will probably go. It'll be kind of cool. We'll see how that happens. I'm basically going to say what everyone else has said. It's balanced well. I couldn't tell what color it was. I asked the owner, "What color did you get?" And he said, "It's supposed to be blue." And I was like, "That's what I thought," or not what I thought, but I was just like, "Yeah, I don't know anyone who didn't see them as all white." Which for me, that's the right color. But if you're going to do other colors, make them look like other colors. Like they did a great job with that on the iPhone Pro. So it felt good, but it's the actual footprint, the surface areas. It's the screen is bigger than I would want for myself.
Yeah, at some point I need to make a trip to the store just to take a look at some of the stuff. But honestly, I just don't care enough at the moment about stuff other than what I have. And what I have is overkill other than just the ridiculous bullshit storage argument that I've had for a long time.
Are you talking about like SSDs?
Yeah.
Okay.
Like the fact that I have to leverage multiple SSDs to address storage deficiencies, even with the price tag of the machine that I have, it just...
It's bonkers.
But then again, I'm also an edge case, and I get that. So I try to be a little more forgiving than I would be otherwise. But still, it's a problem.
Well, I would say you're the only one that's looking in the middle ground right now. This is, if it was, I don't know. I don't know what markup, I don't know what Apple tax is. I would feel reasonable about the cost of storage, but whatever it is right now, it is way too high.
Yeah, that I absolutely 100% agree with. It's more like I have a 4 terabyte internal SSD, and it technically should be enough for what I'm doing, other than my workflow tends to require needing local access to files for a certain amount of time. And so the transition from that to offloading to an external and then synchronizing with NAS and everything else, like it just, I constantly float at about 500 to 600 gigs free, which I feel really uncomfortable with personally from a tech background perspective. But from the content perspective, it's like I can't shrink this down any further. And so it's problematic there. And the answer is I just have to leverage an external hard drive. And that, to me, that's a bad point.
Yeah.
But then again, we're also talking about most people in my shoes probably aren't doing it all off of a mobile. And so it doesn't feel as constrained as I have it feeling.
You say that, but it doesn't matter what Apple computer you buy, the prices of storage are the same.
I agree. And that's the reason I'm very much still adamant that there's a problem there. It's just that form factor wise, I would probably not feel this struggle if I adopted a different solution that cost me more long term, but had a like a workstation set up with a synchronization solution for using lower resolution files for editing on the mobile that synced with the desktop that had access to all the local storage for like there's a huge workflow thing that could happen. But to me that's just overkill for what I do. Like that's production house style workaround and I don't want to invest that kind of price tag at the moment.
Yeah. No, I was gonna make that argument actually, but you beat me to it.
So it's just a difference between
and if I'm
where
not
I
mistaken,
am and somebody else.
yeah. And if I'm not mistaken, like there's nothing between 4 and 8 gigs of storage, correct?
No, it goes from 4 to 8. Well, in the model that I have, 4 was the max.
Oh, okay.
8 is the current max, I think,
Yeah, I think so.
for the mobiles.
Yeah, yeah. And there's nothing between 4 and 8 either. So
No.
So when you start out with like if you start out with a 1 terabyte drive, which is now the base on the MacBook Pros, it wasn't. When I got mine, I have a half gig, but I also don't do what you're doing. But
Funny side note, I finally connected to my minis again not too long ago because both minis have 250 gig drives. The Intel Mini has like 150 gigs free. Granted, it's not doing jack shit, but that's a whole different problem. The Apple Silicon Mini has like 70 gigs free. It's also not doing much. Like there's so little difference between the two in what they are currently doing at the moment that it doesn't explain why there's a like 70 to 80 gig difference in what's being used storage wise. So I don't understand that. But I also haven't investigated it any further. I logged in, I said, oh, that's a problem probably, and decided it's a problem for another day. But the fact that 250 gig was even an option for a computer like that, where granted it's been, 3 years, I guess, since that one was released. But the fact that it's barely doing anything and has such limited storage capacity in less than 5 years is absolute bonkers.
Yeah, it's kind of tricky, and because I get that, and the way and this would certainly be untenable if there wasn't cloud storage. But there are so many people. I would say the standard person or the average user just doesn't need that space. Like it's. I think that if you, that'd be an interesting question to somebody who works at the Genius Bar now. But like, how often are you dealing with people who need space? Because I think that I didn't feel the need to. I do need a little more space on my computer, but I think I would just fill it up with something that I don't. I think I'd be exactly where I am right now. But if I had double the space that I have, and surprisingly down to, I was sitting at 10% free, and now I'm up to 17% free. I didn't know what happened and when it happened, but actually I do. At some point, a whole bunch of duplicates photos were created on my phone, and I deleted them, and then they went away. Like it was something like 50,000 pictures got duplicated. It was a lot. It was not fun to clean up either. So anyway, I derailed myself. But I think most users um, there's so many users that just everything is in the cloud. Everything is on somebody else's computer somewhere.
And I certainly can see that as an argument, with the exception of the fact that that mini is only running Plex Media Server, and it's not storing the media files. It's just the front end. And so on a 250 gig drive, the operating system and whatever supporting files for running Plex Media Server shouldn't leave me with 70 gigs free. Not out of 250.
Right.
Now, I'm sure there's probably something else on there too. But even then, we're talking, it might be something like Make MKV, or I might have even loaded VLC or Handbrake on there. But all of that combined is less than a gig.
Right. What's the story on local snapshots, though? Because local snapshots it'll just fill up a drive.
I don't use snapshots on that one.
Okay. So it's not local snapshots.
Mm-mm. And that one is set to store documents and all in the cloud. So, like, my gut feel is, because I've never erased and reinstalled that one since I got it, my guess is there's a cache of old files from operating system updates that the OS would probably remove if it needed to. And again, this goes back to I haven't investigated it, but that would be my guess as to what's going on. But the fact that it doesn't clean those up is also BS, if that's what it is. Now, if that's not what it is, then there's still some other problem that is a legitimate problem. But if that's the root cause, then why aren't they cleaning that shit up too? It should be done. Why not do it? And the only reason that I think that's probably the culprit is just because I don't do anything else on that machine at all. I never have.
That's interesting. I'd be interested to know what you find.
Yeah, I'll
take a look at it.
I'll eventually dig into it a little bit further, because I don't use it for anything else. Like 70 gigs is still more than enough space for it to not be a problem.
Right.
So I will probably still not worry about it for a little bit, but it's the kind of thing that I will go poking around, because the Intel Mini would have been even older. I do think there was one time that I erased and reinstalled it. That's the only difference in my head that I can think of. And it probably has the same set of applications, if any, installed beyond whatever came with the OS. But that one just sits in the rack. Like, I'm struggling to come up with a use case for it at the moment. So it's just been running as a available remote desktop in the event that I want to double check like a website or something and how it's rendering. Like, it's ridiculous what I've reduced it to, I guess is what it should come down to.
But it's like what a...
No, it's not that old. It was the last i3 available before the Apple Silicon release.
Okay, so was it the Space Gray one? 2018?
Yes. And so, like, the whole reason I didn't sell it is because with Apple Silicon's release, it just wasn't worth selling. And so it's like, well, that's fine. Eventually I will come up with a use for it. I just haven't, because I haven't had a reason to. It ran a Minecraft server for a little bit.
Oh, fun. We have a number of different ways set up for you to get in touch with us to provide feedback, ask questions, or just comment in about something we've discussed.
You can hit us up on Twitter or Instagram at untitled_hosts, or shoot an email over to untitled.hosts@gmail.com.
Or get in touch directly with Jesse at jthart.com, or get in touch with me, John, via telepathy.
If you would like to support our work or are interested in listening to our new after show feed, head over to patreon.com/theUntitledPodcast and take a look at the options we have set up.
Thank you for listening.
We hope you've enjoyed the show.
And we hope to connect with more of you as we continue this journey.
That's a wrap.